My name's Lily. I'm a comic artist and a single mom. Until today, my son and I were living our happy little life. But just now, I got a call from that man, and it shattered our peaceful world. The only thing I could think of was running away with my son. However, my son is currently under his training program. He's totally in his hands. My kid is 4 years old, just started preschool. Their preschool has this military training at the beginning of the year, which is really just a way for parents to spend more money. But my kid has fun, so I'm cool with it. But I never expected his biological dad to be at the training camp. Thinking about that man, my son and he look exactly alike, like peas in a pod. I'll be waiting at the camp. You have an hour to show up, or else. John's deep voice cut into my thoughts and dragged me back to this harsh reality. That or else was a straight-up threat. My son's in his clutches, what can I do? I have to face him, I can't just abandon my son, who I've raised so far. Hanging up, I resignedly drove to the camp. Looking up at the entrance, I couldn't help but sigh. I tried so hard to hide with my son, and yet, I still ran into his dad. Is the universe toying with me? After parking, I found John's office and headed over. My hand was shaking as I knocked, my brain running through excuses to brush him off. Knock, knock. Come in. 2 quick knocks and John's voice invited me in. Hearing it in person was even more powerful than on the phone. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. Hello, John. I'm Leo's mom. What's this about? I'd planned on playing dumb. There's no way John remembers me. John looked up from his computer. The moment our eyes met, my heart skipped a beat. 5 years, and the man was even more attractive. I kept reminding myself to stay calm and play it cool. John gestured to the seat in front of him. Have a seat. Thanks, I said with a confident smile, when inside, I was a mess. As soon as I sat down, I chose to get ahead of the situation. John, I didn't quite get what you meant on the phone. Could you clarify? They say being calm and confident avoids suspicion. John clicked his mouse, then turned the screen toward me. Care explaining this? The screen showed my son's face, handsome and the spitting image of John. Playing the shocked card, I gasped, Wow, John, my son looks so much like you. What a coincidence. 2 unrelated people looking so similar, that's crazy. My acting deserved an Oscar. I almost awarded myself Best Actor. Is it that much of a coincidence? John asked coolly, but I felt a ton of pressure. But I couldn't just stop now. It's unbelievable. Truly a small world, I insisted. I even threw in an affirmative sentence, thinking he'd buy it. But then, John let out a sharp laugh. Lily. How long are you going to keep up this act? You think pretending not to know me will work? Hearing John say my name stunned me. He actually remembers? I was basically a nobody back then. I wanted to keep pretending, but he left me no choice. Lily, a University 2014, Finance Class 1. Need I go on? He pressed, frowning. I instinctively shook my head. He got those details spot on, how can I deny it? Clearly, I couldn't anymore. I pretended to study him closely and then feign surprise. Oh my gosh, you're John. Didn't recognize you at all. You've changed so much. He really had changed, more manly and masculine. But claiming I didn't recognize him was a stretch. John's face is unforgettable. However, he wasn't buying my surprise, and he seemed a bit angry. So, are we gonna talk about why your son looks exactly like me? John asked, staring me down. Why can't classmates just be simple? Why dig so deep? It's pure coincidence, really. We barely interacted in college, never dated. My son's not related to you, trust me. I fixed my gaze on him, hoping my sincerity would sell the lie. John stared me down. I could sense his contained anger. Then he jumped up, leaned forward, his face right in mine, and smirked. Since it's just a coincidence, I'm sure you wouldn't mind a paternity test with your son, right? No way. I blurted, sounding guilty. It was obvious I was hiding something. But really, what choice do I have? I can't really let a paternity test happen. If the results come out, John might kill me. Why not, feeling guilty? He probed, eyebrow raised with that same, cold smirk. His deep eyes made me uneasy. But surrendering so quickly? No way. Why should I be guilty? My son isn't connected to you. I've got nothing to hide. Maybe you look a bit like my ex-husband. Taking a closer look, yeah, you two are pretty similar. My son looks like my ex-husband too, so it's not really surprising he looks like you as well. Comic book artists have quite the imagination. Today, my imagination really had a chance to play. When John heard this, his expression darkened even more than before. He looked at me with such intensity. I didn't even say anything offensive, so why the attitude? What about your ex-husband? He's dead. I made up a lie without a second thought, just to avoid him trying to confront a non-existent ex-husband. Saying he's dead just wraps things up nicely. At that moment, I really admired my own quick wit. How did he die? John asked, frowning. Even the gossiping ladies in the next village aren't this nosy. Died while climbing. No body to be found. As soon as I said that, John looked at me with a grin that sent chills down my spine. Is it really so funny that I'm young and lost my husband? Lily, do you think I'm brain dead? John suddenly switched topics, looking very serious. I was puzzled. Who asks if they're brain dead? Maybe he's feverish and confused. But I answered him sincerely. You don't look it, but asking such a question sure makes you sound it. John's face turned dark with annoyance, like I really upset him, but I was just being honest. He took a deep breath, kept a stern face, and continued. Lily, even if you don't admit Leo is my son, I'll find a way to prove it. He's in military training with me now, you can't stop it. His words felt like a threat, trying to scare the truth out of me. And it worked. Cold sweat ran down my back. I was already thinking about moving to another city with my son. However, John seemed to see right through me and blocked my path. Lily, don't even think about running. You got away 5 years ago, but you'll never do it again. John's words dragged me back to my memories of running away 5 years ago. 5 years back is a time I don't like to remember. That year, I lost my parents and became an orphan. It was National Day 5 years ago. My parents and I went on a road trip and got caught in a landslide. In the blink of an eye, my dad swerved to avoid the biggest rocks that hit him, while my mom shielded me. Before I passed out, I saw nothing but my mom's blood. When I woke up in the hospital, my grandparents were vague about my parents, trying to protect me from the truth. But the truth eventually came out, as it always does. When I saw my parents in the morgue, their bodies were covered in wounds, barely any spot was unscathed. I knew they died to save me, it felt like I was the one who killed them. If they hadn't tried to save me, maybe they'd still be alive. Back then, I lived with endless remorse and longing for them. I barely ate, became a shadow of myself, and relatives watched me closely, fearing I'd do something drastic. I tried taking my own life twice, but they stopped me. It was my cousin Kevin who slapped sense into me. When I refused to eat, Kevin came rushing to my grandma's house and slapped me. Lily, look at what you've become. Your parents died to save you, so you could just give up. They wouldn't have bothered if they'd known you wanted to die. Look outside. Your grandparents cry every day for you. Do you want them to lose you too? Kevin dragged me to the living room to see them begging me to live. Lily, we've lost our children, we can't lose you too. For their sake, for your parents, just live. After that, I never thought about dying again. Though my heart still hurt, I made myself smile around them, afraid to cause more pain. After taking 2 months off, I returned to school. As graduation neared, I struggled to focus on my studies, always on the brink of failing. I often hid in the library, not to read, but because it was quiet and away from everyone. I always took the corner spot. After going there for about half a month, I started finding sticky notes with jokes on my seat every day. Those jokes on the notes kept me company until graduation, adding a bit of sweetness to my otherwise bleak days. On graduation day, I went to the library one last time. A note was on the table, but it wasn't a joke anymore. Look up. Everything outside is beautiful. It was such a simple line, yet it stayed with me. When I left the library, my roommate mentioned a graduation party. Maybe it was the magic of that note's message, but I felt compelled to go. The party was for 5 classes in our program, and John was sitting at the table next to ours. I half heard he was joining the military and talking about confessing to someone he liked, but didn't catch all of it. I had a crush on him back then too. After all, he was the campus heartthrob and a top student, what girl wouldn't? But after my family tragedy, romance was the last thing on my mind. When the dinner was ending, I went to the bathroom and turned a corner to find a drunken John hugging me tightly. I couldn't get free. At that moment, other thoughts crossed my mind. With my parents gone, I longed for a blood-related family member. John was leaving for the military, we were graduating, and we'd never see each other again, making it all too perfect. So, I took him to a hotel, and what happened next just happened naturally. I left while he was asleep, and scared he'd find me, I bought a plane ticket and left Jiang City overnight. Maybe the universe pitied me for being an orphan because that one night gave me a son. Throughout my pregnancy, I was happy, knowing my parents would be happy too. My life just kept getting better and better. These past 5 years, I had a baby and raised him. No matter how hard it got, I felt really happy. Nobody understands how amazing it is to have a close family member like I do. I thought my son and I would just go on living our simple lives. Never expected to run into his dad by coincidence. Lily, why did you disappear without a word back then? John's deep voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up and locked eyes with his deep gaze. The words that followed from his lips shocked me. That night at graduation, I knew it was you. I froze, like I had been rooted to the spot. How did John know about that night? I thought he was too drunk to remember. But he seemed serious, not like he was bluffing. As John came around the table toward me, I snapped out of it just in time. What are you talking about? What night? I don't know. I quickly denied it, trying to hold down my panic. As long as I don't admit anything, John can't pin it on me. Seeing his furrowed brows again, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I quickly made up an excuse to leave. John, something urgent came up at home, I gotta go. Bye. Then I dashed out of there, feeling like a mess as I ran away. On the way out of the training base, I saw kids messing around during drills. They were having a blast. I didn't see my son. Not seeing him kind of relieved my guilt. Oh, son, for our future happiness, I have to leave you here for a while. Heading home, I tried to remember everything from that graduation night 5 years ago. I bumped into him in the restroom. He was puking, leaning against the wall, barely standing. He didn't respond, too drunk. I took him to a hotel, and he didn't say a single thing. But wait, the last moment before I left, he mumbled something. It was like he kept saying Lily. Could he have been calling my name? Oh God, could it really be like that? I was a mix of scared and overwhelmed back then. I didn't pay attention to what he said. I thought it was just meaningless murmurs. So, John wasn't as drunk as I thought. He remembered everything. What's he planning? Can I just leave my son here and never look back? No matter how much I dreaded seeing John, I still had to pick up my son after school. I'd rather face anything than lose my boy. Reaching the base gate, I wondered why I ended up here 3 times today. Soon, Linda brought the kids out. My son, being tall, stood at the back of the group. I spotted him instantly. He ran out, beaming. Mom. Today was awesome. The drills were super fun. He kept babbling. Seeing his excitement, I knew he loved the training. I held his hand, leading him toward the parking. Tell Mom about the fun stuff. We did drills, sang songs, climbed stairs, so much. Seeing him happy made every penny worthwhile. His joy was my goal. He bounced around, then continued, Mom, we have the coolest instructor. Super cool. How cool? Cooler than you? My son, usually so self-obsessed with his looks, admiring someone else was a shock. Super cool. He confirmed. His eyes then widened, looking at the parking lot. Mom, look, that's our super cool instructor. I turned to see John. Suddenly, I regretted not covering his mouth sooner. Oh, sweetie, you really know how to throw your mom under the bus. Mom, isn't he cool? Leo, zip it. I hushed him quickly. Another word, and I'd die of embarrassment. Never would I have guessed my son's cool instructor was John. Did they have some sort of blood bond? Maybe I'd scared him with my voice, as he looked at me, kinda hurt. No time to worry about that though, I needed to flee. As soon as we opened the car door, a firm hand pressed against it, stopping us. Lily, why are you running? My speed was no match for John's long strides. John, what a coincidence. I forced a smile before facing him. Inwardly, I was already cursing. I wasn't running, just going home. My son's cartoons are on soon, can't miss those. I thought my excuse was perfect, but my honest-to-God son blew it. Mom, you don't even let me watch cartoons. Plus, we have replays. Busted by my own kid. I guess teaching honesty really worked way too well. John watched me, amused, daring me to come up with more excuses. Heh, kids and their silly tales, I faked a laugh, then covered my son's mouth before he could reveal more and bundled him into the car. Feeling so defeated, maybe I should just pack up and escape again. Lily, John, looks like you have lots of stuff to carry, must be heavy. You better get going. I cut off John as soon as he spoke. He was holding a ton of stuff, probably for the base, looking for trouble when his arms were full. Not heavy, not urgent. John replied to me casually. But he's not in a hurry, I am. John, I really have something to do at home. Let's chat later. I grabbed his hand, trying to push him away, but he held firm against my car door, and no matter how hard I pushed, he didn't budge. No wonder he was in the military. John. I was both angry and anxious, dropping the stranger act and glaring at him. Suddenly, he just laughed. His mood improved, and he moved his hand away. I didn't get what was so funny, but there was no time to dwell on that. Getting in the car and leaving was the priority. I quickly opened the car door and jumped in. Just as I was about to close it, I heard him softly say, "Drive safely." His gentle words got me all distracted, and even after reaching home, I was still unsettled. I paced the living room, reflecting on the day's events. John probably suspects Leo is his son, possibly already certain of it. If he were sly, he could easily get my son's hair to run a DNA test. He definitely wouldn't let us go easily. Would he try to take my son away from me? The thought that John might take my son sent me into a panic. No way, we have to leave immediately. Son, go pack your suitcase. We have to go, start somewhere new. I can't let John take my son. Oliver looked at me, totally puzzled. Mom, where are we going? To Uncle Kevin's. Didn't you want to see your cousin? Mom will take you there. I planned to first hide at Kevin's place with my kid and then figure out where else we could live peacefully. After quickly packing our things, we headed to the airport. But as soon as we stepped out of the building, someone stopped us. Lily. Running again? John. Seeing him appear out of nowhere left me stunned. Why was he here? John glared at me furiously, snatching my suitcase. His arm muscles tensed with veins popping as he held on tightly. Lily, where are you planning to escape this time? How many years are you planning to disappear? Another 5? His anger made me feel guilty for some reason. I wasn't running. I stammered. But even I couldn't believe my denial, let alone someone as smart as John. If you're not escaping, where are you going with your luggage? He pressed, holding my wrist firmly. Before I could think of a response, a little voice piped up. To Uncle's. Mom said we're going to see my cousin. Thankfully, my son jumped in during the crucial moment. Truly my boy. I decided right then that I'd get him any toy he wanted for the next month. Yes, we're just visiting my hometown, I said, going with my son's story, trying to break free from John's grip, but it was impossible. He looked at me intensely, his eyes fierce. Lily, do you believe your own words? I saw you this morning, and now you want to leave. If it's not running, what is it? His words were tight with pressure, leaving no room for excuses. Lowering my head, I didn't know how to respond. After a long silence, John sighed. Lily, can we sit down and talk things through? He spoke with a tinge of helplessness, as if he was pleading, a side of him I'd never imagined. I eventually brought John back upstairs, into the house. Sit down. I'll settle the kid down first, I said, pointing to the sofa. He even held onto my suitcase, preventing me from running off again. With him blocking my only exit, where could I go? Internally rolling my eyes, I took my son to his room. Mom, are we not going to Uncle's anymore? My sweet boy, still thinking about visiting his uncle, had no clue how deep in crisis we were in. Not today. We'll go another time, sweetheart. Leo, play with your Legos in your room. Mom has to handle something. After giving him something to do, I walked back to the living room. John sat there, still clutching the suitcase handle. Is that really necessary? The moment I stepped out, his gaze locked onto mine as if I were a thief. John, could you let go of the suitcase so we can talk? I tentatively asked. He didn't budge. If you run again, what should I do? His eyes bore into me, searching deep into my soul. I closed my mouth and changed the subject. I moved to the opposite end of the sofa, needing distance from him. It made me nervous. What do you want to discuss? Go ahead. At this point, there was no avoiding it. We had to talk. John's voice was low but serious. Is Leo my son? It was more a statement than a question. I dug my fingers into the sofa, taking a deep breath. There was no point in denying it any longer. Yes. I confessed, not sure how to face him. How could I ever explain that I selfishly wanted to have a child connected to me by blood, so I used his genes? I couldn't. It was unethical, but I didn't regret it. Lily, I want. John started again. What does he want? Does he want to take away my son? I instantly tensed up, warily watching him. John, don't think you can take my son. He might have your genes, but he's my son alone. You can't take him. Emotionally charged, I yelled, glaring at him fiercely. I wouldn't let anyone, not even his biological father, take my son away. If John forced it, I'd fight him with all I have. Lily, calm down. I'm not going to take him away. I promise. Can you just let me finish what I'm saying? John saw how worked up I was, and his voice softened, comforting me. Hearing him promise not to fight me for the kid made me feel a bit relieved. I calmed down a little, but still couldn't fully trust him. John moved a bit closer, and just as I was about to step back, he grabbed my hand, firmly holding on so I couldn't pull away. He looked into my eyes, gentle and sincere. Lily, that night we graduated, I wasn't blackout drunk. I knew it was you, and that's why things happened the way they did. When I woke up, I went to your place to find you, but you were gone. I waited outside your building for a week, but still didn't see you. I asked your relatives, but they just said you left for somewhere far without knowing exactly where. I asked so many of our classmates, tried so hard to get any news on you, but nothing. Later, I joined the military but never stopped looking for you. Lily, I've been searching for you for 5 years. Every word shocked me, and I even doubted if I heard him right. How could he? Lily, I finally found you. Please don't run away again, okay? John was genuinely pleading with me. Everything he said made it clear he liked me, that he was deeply invested in me. But how could this be? I couldn't wrap my head around all of this, my mind was a mess. John saw the state I was in and, feeling sorry for me, pulled me into a hug, gently patting my back, silently comforting me. After a while, I pulled away from his embrace. John, I croaked his name, not knowing what to say next. The fact that he liked me, that he's been looking for me all these years, besides being surprised, I felt so many indescribable emotions. To think there was someone who cared so much about me. Lily, I've liked you for a long time. Finding you made me so happy, and I promise I won't fight you for the kid. I just want to take care of you. I know it hasn't been easy for you to have our kid alone and raise him all these years. I regret I didn't find you sooner. Lily, would you give me a chance to take care of you? John earnestly confessed, every word filled with affection, promising he wouldn't take the child from me. But my mind was still in chaos. I didn't know how to respond to him. Everything that happened today was beyond anything I had imagined. I never thought I'd see John again, let alone have him confess his feelings for me. After what felt like forever, I finally looked up at him and hesitantly said, John, let me think about it. Okay. He agreed instantly, his eyes filled with affection as he looked at me. Lily, I'll give you time to consider, but please don't run away again, okay? And don't reject the care I want to provide for you and our son, alright? I want to make up for these lost 5 years. John's sincerity made it impossible for me to refuse him. Okay. Maybe I could try accepting a life with him in it. After that day, John became a frequent visitor at our home. He'd bring us breakfast in the morning, take our son to the training base, and bring him back in the evening, often staying to cook us dinner. He was constantly looking out for me, often bringing flowers and gifts. I hadn't yet told our child about his identity, thinking it best to wait a little longer. One afternoon, a week later, while I was working on some sketches at home, I got a call from the kindergarten teacher. Leo's mom. Leo got into a fight with a classmate. Can you come to the training base? My first thought was, isn't John at the base? Why didn't he handle this himself? Okay, I'll be right there. I rushed to the base after I hung up. By the time I arrived at the office, the other child's parent was there, yelling at the teacher. They seemed difficult to deal with. Where are the kids' parents? How come they haven't shown up yet to apologize for hitting my child? Daisy, hold on a moment. Leo's mom will be here soon. The teacher tried to soothe her while protecting my son, clearly worried Daisy might lash out at him. Sorry for being late, Linda. I knocked and stepped forward, moving quickly to my son's side to protect him. Seeing his hurt, speechless expression made my heart ache. Leo's mom, Linda, started to speak but was cut off by Daisy. You're finally here. Look at the state your son left mine in. How could he be so rough? What are you going to do about this? I had already seen her child was a bit red but had no cuts or bleeding. Although I felt sorry that my son hit someone, Daisy's loud blaming was really off-putting. Linda, can you tell me what happened? I ignored her, trying to understand the whole story first. Linda explained everything that happened without showing any bias. The two kids were playing during a training break. Initially, things were fine, but a disagreement ensued, and Leo ended up hitting Oliver. Dylan's voice cut through again before Linda could finish. Did you hear that? Your son started it. Your kid is violent now, Who knows how he'll turn out when he's older. You need to write this, or it's your fault. Her words made my face turn cold instantly. It took all my might to not slap her right there. How could a mom have such a nasty mouth? I know my son wouldn't hit someone without reason, I'm confident in his upbringing. But since he hit Oliver first, we were at fault. Leo hitting Oliver was wrong, and we apologize. We'll compensate as necessary, but you shouldn't say such harsh things. It's normal for kids to argue, there's no need to make this ugly. I tried to handle the situation calmly, hoping to resolve it well. But the other parent refused to communicate amicably, acting like they'd chew us up. What do you mean normal? Your son hit my kid and that's normal? Are you even teaching your kid right? Look at your son, he's cruel and mean. That's obviously how you raised him. You have no manners, what kind of person are you? She was just yelling like a madwoman, and my face was getting darker by the minute. Just then, my son in my arms started to wail. Mom, Oliver was the one who said I don't have a dad. He called me a bastard without a father first. He started it. My son was crying, his little face turning red from holding back tears. I quickly hugged him, my heart aching. Leo, don't cry, Mommy's here. I comforted him in my arms, trying to calm him down. Then Daisy started mocking again. No wonder he hits people, he's a fatherless street kid. If he doesn't have someone to raise him, why did you have him at all? Her venomous words just pushed me to my limits. How could anyone say something so heartless to a child? Like mother, like son. I stood up to tell her to have some decency, but before I could say anything, a cold voice came from the doorway. Who says he has no dad? I'm his father. John suddenly appeared at the door, walked over to where we were, and stood protectively beside us. For some unknown reason, I felt more confident with him there. Sorry, I was out for a meeting today. Is Leo okay? He looked over at the kid first and seemed relieved seeing him unharmed. The kindergarten teacher nearby looked a bit confused when hearing John claim to be Leo's dad, like she was both surprised and not at the same time. I guessed it was because of their faces. John, are you really his dad? Or did his mom just trick you into it? Daisy started spewing insults again, saying all kinds of nasty things. Enraged, I couldn't help it and slapped her across the face. What's wrong with you? Got a mouthful of crap. She stood there stunned but then snapped back to reality, trying to come at me. You little brat, how dare you hit me? But before she could get any closer, John blocked her. What do you think you're doing? You insulted my wife and kid, and you deserve to be hit. I'm warning you, I've never hit a woman, but that doesn't mean I won't. Try spewing more crap. John's stern threat finally shut her up, her eyes filled with fear. Linda, who was also there, seemed scared too but finally tried to mediate. All right, everyone calm down. It's just a small issue between kids, no need to make a big scene. Daisy, it really was wrong of your family. You can't teach children to talk like that. Leo's dad is indeed John here, so teach your kids right. The teacher probably had her hands full dealing with parents like Daisy. You teacher are biased, how come you don't mention Leo hitting my son? Daisy tried to argue more, but a single glance from John made her shut up. We'll pay for any medical costs if your kid was hurt, but apologizing is not gonna happen. If an apology is needed, it's your family who should be apologizing. Go to the hospital and get a diagnosis, then come find me with the bill. John coldly finished speaking, picked up our son and took my hand, ready to leave. He gave Linda a nod before we left. Linda, if there are any more issues, have them come find me. By the time I realized it, John had taken us to his office. I hadn't expected the situation to be handled this way, but honestly, I felt relieved. I wasn't keen on making my kid apologize either. I'll get you guys something to eat, just have a seat. John put Leo on the couch, gave my hand a squeeze, and left the room, leaving us some privacy. I smiled, he's really considerate. Leo, can Mom talk with you for a bit? I sat down next to him, pulling him close. Mom. He looked up at me, eyes still red from all the crying earlier. I felt bad but knew I still had to teach him a lesson. Leo, even though Mommy didn't make you apologize earlier, you should know that hitting isn't right. Solving problems by hitting is not okay. If someone says mean things, you can always tell Mommy or the teacher. And, low-key, what I did wasn't okay either. Got to be better next time. Got it, Mom. I was wrong. I won't hit next time. He apologized obediently, clearly understanding his mistake. He's always been so sensible, and I hugged him tightly. It was my fault for not protecting him better. After a while, he carefully asked, Mom, can I go to Dad if something happens? Is John really my dad? Seeing his hopeful eyes, I knew I couldn't keep it from him anymore. Plus, what Oliver said made me realize how much he minded not having a dad. I had always thought I could raise him just fine on my own, but I overlooked that a child needs a father's love too. I was selfish. I hoped that now, his dad's presence could make up for what he'd missed. Yes, he is your dad. Leo is not a fatherless child, don't listen to what others say. His face lit up, and I chuckled, messing up his hair a little. It seems he really liked John. I mean, who wouldn't like calling a guy as handsome as John dad at first sight? John walked in with a bunch of food then, and Leo immediately ran over, hugging his leg tightly. Daddy! He shouted. John stood there stunned, and when he realized what was happening, he was juggling the food, trying to set it down so he could scoop up his son in a tight hug. Lily. He looked at me, tears welling up in his eyes, his voice catching in his throat. Seeing him like this made my own eyes feel misty. You were always his dad. He's your son. It's only right he calls you dad. I just think Leo would be happier with his dad's protection. I miss my own dad so much. John walked up to me, holding our son with one arm and wrapping the other around me. Ever since I told Leo that John is his dad, John's been showing off. He spent the whole afternoon parading Leo around the military training base. He'd tell everyone we met that Leo is his son, like he wanted the entire world to know. I almost felt the base was too small for John's flair. While he was off bragging, I was chilling in his office, waiting for Leo's teacher to get back to me. Daisy had taken her kid to get checked out and Linda came to find me just before school was about to end. Hey Leo's mom, take a look at this, Linda said, looking a bit awkward as she handed me her phone. Daisy had sent a message along with a bill. The gist was that they'd gone for a checkup, her son was hurt, they got some meds, and they wanted us to pay up. I looked at the bill, it was just for some ointments and nothing serious. Linda, I'll transfer you the money right away, thanks for handling this. I sent the money over, problem solved. As I was leaving, Linda asked curiously, is John really Leo's dad? I knew she meant no harm, just some harmless gossip. Yeah, his dad's been in the military and wasn't around much. Linda suddenly got it and laughed, they look so alike. I was guessing from the first day of training. Had no clue it was true. She left, leaving me awkward because even the teacher noticed the resemblance. No wonder John called me right after seeing Leo on the first day. This was clear as daylight. Since John stepped up, he's taken over picking up and dropping off our kid, and even grocery shopping and cooking. I suddenly found myself with nothing much to do. They were bonding great, and Leo seemed way happier than before. As for me and John, neither of us brought up altering our arrangement. I take it day by day, not saying a word. He's gradually become a part of my life, his presence felt everywhere at home. First, it was doing laundry and cooking, then staying over when the kids stayed up late. By the time the 2-week training ended, my house was littered with his stuff. I thought I should remind him, but he came to talk to me first. Lily, I'd like to move in with you and the kids so it's easier to look after you both. His words surprised me. Living alone with the kid for so long made me feel cautious. Just as I was about to object, our son chimed in. Mom, let Dad stay with us. Other families do. Seeing the hopeful look in my son's eyes, I couldn't say no. Lily, I don't want to pressure you. I just want to be close to you guys, John said, his eyes full of emotion. To be honest, I was tempted by the warmth he brought into our home. So, John moved in, sharing a room with our son. At first, it was just essentials, but within less than 2 months, his stuff was everywhere. It's like he moved his entire life's belongings. But I couldn't be bothered to fuss. One night as I was working in my room, my editor pinged me. Lily. Your new comic is a hit. It's blowing up. The moment I saw the message, I jumped with joy. But too excited, I bumped into the table with a thud, gritting my teeth in pain. John, hearing the noise, rushed in with a spatula in hand, looking really worried. Lily, are you okay? Where did you hurt yourself? Seeing him, I must have been high on excitement because I rushed into his arms to share the news. John, I made it. My comic is a hit. He paused for a sec, then wrapped me tightly in his arms with the spatula. Congratulations, Lily. I'm so happy for you. I smiled, realizing he was genuinely happy for me. It's all that mattered at that moment. After a while, I realized he was still holding me and the spatula. The whole scene was hilariously awkward. I pulled back shyly, sorry, I got too excited. But honestly, I just wanted to share the moment with him first. Living together must have made me used to having him around. He looked deeply into my eyes, giving me a peck on my forehead. Lily, I'm happy too. Thank you for sharing this with me and for letting me in. He wanted to continue, but his dish started burning, so he dashed off to save it. Left alone, I grinned like an idiot, taking in the view and the smell of food, feeling blessed. My parents had been gone for 5 years, but I finally felt at home again. I shut my laptop and walked to the kitchen, speaking to the man who was focused on cooking. John, let's visit Jiangxing this weekend. I want to introduce you to my parents. On the day we left for Jiangxing, John wore a formal suit. I appreciated his courtesy, making me feel valued. Once there, we headed to my parents' graves. Standing before their photos, I couldn't stop the tears. Mom, Dad, I brought Leo to see you. And this is John, Leo's father. My son sweetly called them Grandpa and Grandma, holding my hand patiently. Hearing my introduction, John got serious and solemn. Mr. and Mrs., I'm John. I'm sorry it took this long to come meet you. Rest assured, from now on, I will take good care of both of them, make them happy every day. Please, trust them to me. He made several heartfelt promises, and I listened, my eyes welling up with gratitude. As we were leaving, John looked at me earnestly. Lily, can I call them Mom and Dad? His hopeful eyes met mine, and I thought my parents would love to have a son-in-law. Sure. I agreed, knowing my parents would be happy to see me start a new family. And, on days with John, I'm really happy too. John's like a kid on a sugar rush, shouting almost incoherently to his parents. Mom, Dad, we're leaving now, we'll come see you again next time. Bye, Grandma and Grandpa. After leaving the cemetery, we headed straight back to the house I grew up in. As soon as I stepped inside and saw the familiar setup, I felt a lump in my throat. I hadn't been back in so long because ever since my parents passed, being there alone felt too heavy. Everywhere I looked was a reminder of them, each item pulling me back to those joyful times, which now just made me sad. The house, untouched for so long, was surprisingly clean, likely from my grandparents stopping by often to tidy up. Just as we put our luggage down, there was a knock at the door. It was Kevin. I opened it to see my cousin, looking very excited to see me. Lily, it really is you. I saw your curtains drawn open and hurried over. Kevin lives just across from us. He hadn't been around long before he informed every relative, and within an hour, our house was filled with aunts and uncles. Everyone was passing my son around, each eager to hold him, and John, visiting for the first time, was surrounded by family, being asked about everything from his ancestors to his favorite foods. Seeing the house bustling and lively, I couldn't hold back my tears. "Mom, Dad, can you see this? I'm doing well, I have my own child and my own family now." Later that night, after the little guy drifted off, I cuddled on the couch with Leo, watching TV. Wrapped in his arms, he was reluctant to let go. Ever since he acknowledged his place in my life today, he seized every opportunity for affection, completely unashamed. "Got to make up for lost time," he said. It was actually pretty cozy. "John, let's find a time to get the paperwork done," I suggested calmly, though my nerves were a mess. Leo's still technically registered at Kevin's place. Getting everything official would mean he'd be coming home for good. John's reaction laid my worries to rest. He picked me up and spun me around, grinning. "Lily, I love you. I've been waiting for this, thank goodness I didn't miss out on you." His happiness caught on, and I felt overwhelmed with joy. "John, I love you too. Thank you for giving me a family." The words had barely left my lips when he pulled me in for a kiss. "I'm so grateful I didn't let them pass me by. John and Leo have truly made my life complete." John's epilogue. I'm John, and I met Lily back in college. We were in the same big lecture hall, and I remember one time, the professor called on her to answer a question. She got it wrong, but apologized with this sweet smile. I thought to myself, how could someone be so adorable? She's a total embodiment of her name. Over time, I kept seeing her around campus. That constant sweet smile of hers was irresistible, and without much thought, I found myself falling for her. I planned to tell her how I felt before graduation, but then she suddenly took a 2-month leave. Turned out, her parents were in a car accident. My heart ached for her, wanting to hold her, but on what grounds? If I'd known what was to happen, I'd have been bolder then. She came back, but she was different, always quiet and withdrawn. This chatty, lively girl turned silent and reserved, and it pained me to see it. I wanted to cheer her up. I noticed she'd often visit the library and bury herself in books for hours. So, I had this idea. I'd leave a sticky note on her usual spot every day, with a little joke on it. Anything to get a smile out of her. For 2 months straight, I'd do that, sitting a few rows back each time. Funny thing is, she could have seen me if she'd just turned around. On graduation day, I left my last note. And she finally smiled. She even attended the farewell dinner, which made my day. Had a few too many, planning to confess my feelings, wanted to be by her side forever. But she caught me off guard with her own surprise. Spotted her heading to the restroom and went after her, pretending to be tipsy to strike up a chat. Didn't expect her to take me to a hotel. I was planning to stop things, but she kept teasing me, breaking down into tears when I tried pulling back. Seeing the girl I liked this way, I gave in. Holding her through the night, I felt like the luckiest guy alive. But by morning, she was gone. Rushed to her place, only to find it empty. An entire week, I camped outside her place. No lights, no signs of her. For 5 years, I kept thinking back to that night. How could I fall asleep and let her slip away? I joined the military, sought bits of info here and there, but came up empty. By the time I left service, I'd started a children's boot camp with a buddy. Struck dumb the day I saw Leo at the camp, his resemblance to me undeniable. I quickly got hold of his details. When I read his mom's name was Lily, I was ecstatic. After 5 years, I'd finally found her. I called immediately, then sat by the door, waiting for her to arrive. When she did, stepping through the office entrance, she hadn't changed a bit. My heart screamed to rush her with affection, but I held back, afraid it might overwhelm her. Our little chat confirmed Leo was my son. Her pretending not to remember me was an act I saw through. Played it patient. 5 years had passed, a little more wouldn't hurt. That day at school pickup, hearing my son compliment me, music to the ears. Then seeing them drive away left me uneasy. Went to her home address, and there she was, packing, ready to escape again. Anger and fear surged. I couldn't bear losing her a second time. So I brought her back, determined to talk. Laid bare my feelings, told her how 5 years of longing had passed. That night, I resolved to turn my sincerity into a promise she could trust. Settled into a life together, slowly but surely, she began to open up. Our first hug in months found me burning dinner in excitement. The day she took me to meet her parents, I was tying my tie with trembling fingers before their graves, promised them I'd take good care of their daughter and grandson, that our family would know happiness. With time, we married. Standing beside the woman I'd loved since college, and our son felt like life's greatest reward. Then, while expecting our second child, she showed me a box of sticky notes from our final college year. Laughing, she recalled someone leaving jokes daily in her usual study spot. "I think he had a crush on me," she giggled, eyes teasing. Seeing those notes again, I gazed at her lovingly. "Yeah, that's right, I've always had a crush on you," knowing she'd catch on eventually. But, blame it on pregnancy brain, she didn't connect it right away. I even confessed outright, only to feel slightly disheartened. Her lightbulb moment came just before delivering, eyes wide. "John, the notes, they were from you?" Our daughter arrived soon after, completing our family. 2 kids now, my heart full of warmth and pride. In the end, I gave Lily the happiness and love she deserved.